Keystone has been languishing for review since 2008. Why are Republicans pushing for passage this week?
Well, the White House has been hiding behind process for 6 years, and a 6-year process is not one anyone should be proud of. It's not one anyone should be committed to, and Republicans have simply lost their patience, now have the opportunity to do something about it, and that's what you're seeing in the House and Senate.
Kevin, what's at stake here, particularly for the state of Nebraska? On Friday, the state Supreme Court is going to conclude proceedings dealing with the validity of the proposed route of the pipeline through the state. What's at stake for Nebraskans?
Well, you know, every Friday the Supreme Court has a chance to sort of settle the question of whether or not the pipeline route is valid and the law that allowed it to be expedited stands or not. Tomorrow we could get our answer, and the question is really one of whether or not Nebraska is going to provide an excuse for the State Department to continue holding off on its national interest determination. It could be that the Supreme Court overrules the lower court, and suddenly there's going to be a discussion of whether or not it's time to proceed with a yes-no answer.
Is it about yes and no, Douglas Holtz-Eakin? Is that what's at stake here?
Yeah, I think this is, Keystone Pipeline or not, and if you do the accounting, it's hard to make the case that you shouldn't build the pipeline. This is something that's in the national interest. It's something that generates economic activity in the United States, and something that should have gone forward already and has been put off for far too long. I think you'll see that case made on the floor of the House, which I expect to see it pass. The interesting question will be how things play out in the Senate. There will be amendments offered on the floor. There weren't amendments in the committee, and some of those amendments may be able to attract Democrats. And Kevin follows this pretty closely. I wonder what he thinks the chances are.
Doug, I think that Democrats right now have a series of amendments that are nothing more than poison pills, and they don't have much chance of making their way onto the bill. The one that does have some staying power.
I'd agree. I think it's the Republican amendments to try to attract Democrats.
Oh, yeah. No, so the one that actually could pull some Democrats on is the efficiency amendment. Basically, Senators Shaheen and Portman have an efficiency bill that's been languishing, really victimized by partisan warfare, largely consensus legislation. That could be a vote getter, but whether it gets you to 67 to uphold a veto when push comes to shove, not so very clear about that.
Doug, will it get to 67? It seems that there's been a little bit of horse trading behind the scenes. Joe Manchin and Senator Hoeven, they've been trying to get the necessary votes. Are they going to get to 67 to override a veto?
Well, I certainly think they'll get to 60. I mean, we did see Senator Manchin cross in committee. I think you'll get more on the floor. 67 is a big reach, and I think the key there is not simply Keystone in isolation. It is, as Kevin said, will they put in the energy efficiency bill, which is popular on both sides of the aisle, and will that draw enough votes? That's going to be the key issue.
Doug, let me ask you, the United States hasn't always agreed with its allies on issues that could be of mutual benefit. If President Obama vetoes Keystone, will irreparable harm be done to the relationship between the U.S. and Canada?
I think this is a really important consideration. The Canadians are already upset. Harm has been done to our relationship with our most important trading partner, and it would be more severely damaged by a veto. I think that's unwise. The stakes are too high. We have too many shared interests with Canada, and it's simply not worth it over this pipeline to engage in a further dispute with the Canadians.
Kevin, you agree with that assessment?
I absolutely agree with that. If you listen to the Canadians and hear what they have to say about it, if you read their newspapers, listen to their commentary on Canadian television, they're livid about the delay, and they regard this as an affront. They regard this as an economic hegemony being exerted by their southern neighbor. And their question is, why should we continue to try to do business with someone who won't continue to do business the way they have in the past?
Well, Kevin,
so they're building lines Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, Kevin. Yeah, my colleague Rebecca Penty has a story on Bloomberg.com. It says that Canada doesn't need the Keystone Pipeline to win the U.S. crude oil supply battle. She writes, and I quote, "The record amount of Canadian oil flowing into the U.S. shows that some of the pipeline project's original goals are already being met. And if, as Rebecca writes, Canadian producers are already sending more crude from Alberta's oil sands across the border by trains and other expanded pipeline networks, why is Keystone necessary?"
Well,
so, Mark, I think the answer... Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, so you've already got a rich market for heavy sour oil in the Gulf of Mexico, but most of that market's being served by Venezuela and by Mexico. Keystone could bring Canadian oil into that market in greater volumes, democratizing the market, bringing a better price for refiners. I think that's worth doing. And if it travels by pipeline, the price is going to be lower in terms of transportation costs delivered, so it has a more democratizing effect.
Doug, you wanted to jump in?
I agree with that. I think the key is, from a Canadian point of view, they get access to a market that they really would like to compete in. The pipeline's a better way to transport the oil. It's safer. Economics abhors a vacuum. If you don't have the Keystone pipeline, they will find other ways, but the low-cost, safe way is the thing to do.
We have a little less than a minute left. A question for both of you. Doug, you first. Is the Keystone debate about the pipeline, or is it really about overall U.S. energy policy? And if, as expected, the president does veto the legislation, then what?
Well, certainly this has become a symbolic issue, and these are symbolic votes, which is one of the reasons that logic and rationality don't dictate the outcome. Instead, we'll see votes against strictly to make a point, and the president's veto will be just to make a point. Unfortunately, the Canadians think that point is Americans no longer our ally, and they're trying to dictate our environmental policy. It's the wrong point to make.
And Kevin, I'll let you get the last word in here.
I don't think it's about the oil, Mark. If you look at what the State Department's done, they've allowed extra volumes to flow down the Alberta Clipper line, more Canadian oil coming into the U.S., while another pipeline, Line 3, is being serviced. If they were against Canadian oil, they had a chance to say no, they didn't take it. This is much more about presidential prerogative and politics, as Doug said.